And now, class of 2010, it is my privilege to introduce to you, for the first time, Dr. Jessica Jackley.
That feels weird. This is amazing. Thank you so very much. It's such an honor to be here. I'm surprised that I'm a pretty emotional person, but I've been fighting back tears all morning. This is an amazing, amazing place. You have an amazing community. Singing was beautiful. Congratulations to you for your honor. I want to spend more time here. I know many of you have spent many years here already or getting ready to head out, but I want to come back. It's funny. Well, first of all, let me say this. Good afternoon, good morning to all of you. What time zone are we in? I do travel a lot. Good morning to all of you. Thank you, President Rowe. Thank you to the Board of Trustees, Mr. Crawford. Thank you to faculty, parents, family, and friends. And most of all, the reason we're here, thank you very much to the class of 2010 for having me here today. It's an honor to be here and to celebrate this day with you. You know, 10 years ago today, I was preparing for my own graduation. I think it was on another week past today, actually. I was at Bucknell University, and I had the honor there as well of giving my own commencement speech. And this was a really wonderful opportunity for me as I was preparing for this, to think back to that time and to remember how I was feeling. Sorry, I'm really not used to this. I was thinking back to that time and how I felt and what I thought about myself, what I thought about my education, what I thought about the world. And I realized that a few significant things have changed, but some things haven't. To give you an idea of what that day was like for me when I got to do that, I remember feeling so overwhelmingly thankful and honored that I got to be the one standing up talking. I knew that my classmates, they were the reason that my college experience was what it was. What I did for my commencement speech back then was I actually thought through what I believed my friends would say had they been given the chance to stand up here. It was mentioned that I studied philosophy and political science. I also studied poetry. And so my commencement address ended up being sort of this long poem. I thought it was very avant-garde, very cool. It was sort of a list of the things I could imagine my friends saying had they been up here. So there were a lot of different messages and a lot of different voices, a lot of different sentiments that came out for me that day. And as I thought back to that day, I realized that theme of the voices around me, right? Hearing my own voice and hearing the voices of those around me, that theme of hearing other people's stories and understanding what they were going through, that's been one of the most important themes in my life in the last 10 years. And Kiva is fundamentally about stories. I don't know if, when you hear about Kiva, and this may be new to some of you, but it's a peer-to-peer micro-lending platform, as was described. And microfinance, just to define terms, think of that as financial services for the poor. Think of all the things you get at your bank, and imagine those tailored to the needs of people living on a few dollars a day. Micro-lending or microcredit are these small loans, just one thing that microfinance provides. And basically, these small loans allow people to start or grow businesses and lift themselves out of poverty. So, Kiva, basically, while it might sound like it's about finance or economic empowerment, it is about those things. It is about using technology to enable us to reach out to each other. It's mostly about stories. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. I believe stories are the best thing that we can give each other, our own genuine stories. You might notice that I have some notes up here, but I decided I'm not really going to look at those because I think days like this, when you're graduating and leaving an amazing academic institution, it's kind of about winging it. It's kind of about not saying, wait, I got to go look that up in my book before I respond. Wait, let me look at my notes. It's sort of about standing up and just saying what you know already. So my story, you can start stories anywhere, but I'm going to start, and don't worry, I'm going to fast forward a lot. But I want to start today to tell you my story when I was 6 years old. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I remember learning about the poor for the first time in Sunday school. And I remember two things that day. Number one, I remember my Sunday school teacher telling us, that the poor, who were people that needed food or clothing or shelter, something that they didn't have, Jesus said that the poor would always be with us. Now, pause right there. This freaked me out. I thought what this meant in my head, and as I was imagining my interactions with the poor based on what we had just learned, I remember thinking it must kind of be like sharing toys with my little brother. I thought I could do this, didn't sound too hard, but when I heard that the poor were never going away, I was completely terrified because I imagined this long line of people following me around my entire life, and I didn't know how it would work out logistically. So that was me kind of freaking out, but luckily, my Sunday school teacher also told us, and I recognize I'm paraphrasing, what you do for the least of these, you do for me, that Jesus said that too. So I was both completely terrified of this big problem that was never going away in the world, but I also felt really excited and inspired to try to contribute, and it must be something of ultimate significance and of real importance to God. This was also fun, right? I'm a 6-year-old kid thinking, wait a minute, God needs my help? This is fantastic. I didn't know that. So I felt really empowered. Fast forward a bunch. Throughout most of my life, the other stories that I heard about the poor were mostly stories of sadness and suffering. Usually, if they were in the news, it would be accompanied with a big, overwhelming statistic that would make me feel, again, overwhelmed and kind of scared. And usually, the only thing that I could do in response to these stories was to react by donating some money. I grew up in a wonderful, loving home, middle-class family. We didn't have a lot of money or anything like that, so maybe I would give $10, $20 sometimes. But I did it, I noticed after a while, and I'm sad and feel a little bit guilty to admit this, but a lot of my philanthropy, a lot of my volunteering, a lot of my responses over time were sort of this Pavlovian response to stories of sadness that made me feel guilty and sometimes shameful about my own relative wealth, and I would give money or respond pretty much to make myself feel better. What I wasn't doing anymore was really listening to the stories of people who were suffering or people who had this need in the world. I wasn't listening anymore. I was tuning out the details and just saying, let me just get this over with so I can feel better and go on with my day. So, fast forward a bunch more. This is not a prescriptive talk. I'm just going to tell you my story, but I'm not recommending that you graduates go out and do this exact thing. But I didn't have a plan after college, so I graduated, and I moved on a whim to California. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a car or a bike or anything, but day one, I landed with my suitcases, and I walked around Stanford's campus handing out my resume to see if I could get a job and find somewhere to live. Thank goodness, I actually got a job right away as a temporary administrative assistant for somebody who was on medical leave at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. This was my first job. I found myself in the middle, though, of this amazing institution, right? And this place called the Center for Social Innovation. Suddenly, I found myself around people every day who were thinking about using business skills and principles to solve social problems. I had never been interested in business, hadn't taken a business course in my life, thought that was completely irrelevant to the things I wanted to do in the world, but suddenly I was around people that were thinking about these ideas. Well, the best thing about my job was that I got to meet all these wonderful people and I got to crash classes sometimes. So I'd sneak in and sit in on lectures once in a while when I wasn't noticed on the back of the steps or something like that. One day, 3 years into my job, I stayed much longer than that temporary role, and my job evolved and changed. But one day, this gentleman named Dr. Muhammad Yunus came to campus. Who here knows who that is? So Dr. Yunus won the Nobel Peace Prize 3 years ago for his work pioneering modern microfinance, and he has an amazing story. There's not time today to tell it, but I'll tell you the 3 things that stood out to me. Number 1, he told me what microfinance was. He talked about this way of interacting with the poor that sounded like it was actually solving some real problems in the world. His organization, the Grameen Bank, at this point has served millions and millions of people all around the world. So that was number 1. Number 2, his story is very accessible. If I do quickly summarize it, he basically goes into a village in Bangladesh, sits down with women who are poor. He was actually a professor of economics at the University of Chittagong in Bangladesh. But he walks into this village, sits down with women, and asks them why they believe they're poor and what they think the problem was. They basically explain that they're stuck in a cycle of lending to of borrowing money from money lenders at a very, very high interest rate. So they wake up every day, they work very, very hard to weave these baskets, but they don't have materials to weave the baskets, so you have to go borrow money, buy materials, weave the baskets. They sell them at the end of the day for a profit, but unfortunately, that money has to go right back to the money lender and they start over the next day. And if they're lucky, they sell enough to actually pay that person back. Usually they get stuck and they continue to owe money time.